Good afternoon. My name is Mark Washak. I'm Vice President and Director of Wedbush Futures. Wedbush Futures is an FCM member of NIBA and one of the sponsors for today's sessions. Wedbush Futures is one of the largest capitalized non-bank FCMs in the U.S. We are a division of Wedbush Securities, a full-service securities and investment services firm that provides financial services to individual, institutional, and issuing clients. The Futures team is located here in Chicago in the Board of Trade building and is led by Bob Fitzsimmons. A few points about Wedbush, the parent. Wedbush was founded in 1955 by Ed Wedbush. The office was opened in Los Angeles in 1957, and for the next decade or so, really focused on retail security sales. Wedbush became New York Stock Exchange members in 1971. They became self-clearing and offered correspondent clearing in 1972. Wedbush acquired Lime Brokerage in 2011. Lime provides low latency access and hosting services to top trading companies and their affiliates. So Wedbush wanted to continue to expand its offerings and decided to move into the FCM space. Very nice to see somebody that wants to move into this space rather than exit the space. So Wedbush acquired two Chicago-based FCMs. They first acquired the Crossland LLC FCM in July of 2014. And then in December, they acquired the KCG Americas FCM. So today, Wedbush is a FCM that offers a full suite of services, but we try to deliver a level of personal attention that clients may not receive otherwise. As some of my colleagues from the other FCMs earlier said, we do it all. We execute, we clear. There's some differences between FCMs, but again, we're mid-tier. We try to listen to your needs, try to find solutions that are fair for you as well as your clients. The team here is experienced. We offer clearing services to proprietary trading firms, CTAs, self-directed professionals, introducing brokers, and commercial hedgers. We're members of all U.S. exchanges. We have international relationships for clearing foreign firms. We're members of FIA. Currently, we have $1.5 billion in customer seg funds and about $120 million in excess capital. Wedbush also has the First Capital Ag Group, which focuses on commercial ag business. They're located up in Wisconsin. And they also have we have a retail sector called efutures.com. They focus on individual retail clients. You can find out more about Wedbush at our website, wedbushfutures.com. So I have the privilege today of introducing the moderator for the next panel, Bob Iacchino. Bob is the co-founder and chief market strategist at Path Trading Partners, a global strategy and proprietary trading firm. Bob is principal and head of research at trendytrade.com, a financial technology firm focused on demystifying the global markets for the average active investor. Bob is a 25-year industry veteran and former institutional strategist and principal at a future-based fund of funds. Currently, Bob is a contributor to the CME Group educational effort, CNBC Futures Now, and weekly guest on Bloomberg Television, BNN Canada, Sky News Australia, and CNN. Let's welcome Bob.
Thank you, Mark. That was a great introduction. I wrote that for him, by the way, so it had to be great. So I have the privilege of moderating the panel on big data and AI, and I'm going to ask the panelists before I introduce them to talk to me like a 5-year-old because I had to look up big data. So I don't know if the rest of you out here think that it is any more complicated than the words actually are. So before I introduce them, I'm just going to read that it is an extremely large data set that may be analyzed. So like the Seinfeld big salad. So on our panel today, we have Alexandra Lively from Bar Chart. I'm sure you can pick out which one she is. Steve Dench from Agribull. Did I say that right, Steve?
Correct, yes.
That's right. And Brian Clark from Ascent RegTech. And I would actually like to start with Brian, if I could, to kind of go into what is RegTech and how does it fit into Fintech or financial technology?
So I think it's RegTech is a natural offshoot in the fintech ecosystem. You know, part of what we see the application of technology to regulatory issues. Again, like Rick said, it is a function of a lot of depth and breadth. And so I want to focus it on two specific areas there. From a depth standpoint, it's going to allow you to automate regulatory functions like anti-money laundering, cybersecurity, KYCs, different forms of due diligence, and really processes that your compliance function has to operate on. From a breadth standpoint, it's going to allow you to build digital infrastructure that automates pieces of this item by item. And this is really, when you look at it, process automation. I think the key with any sort of process automation as it is in RegTech is it's the domain expertise. You're combining compliance and regulation and what you have to do into an automated fashion. So what we see as RegTech in financial services, it's really in multiple different industries. Particularly here, a direct result of two things. First, Dodd-Frank in 2008 imposed a pretty significant cost on a lot of firms. And then,
Microphone is not working.
not working? That's ironic.
We got financial technology, we don't have actual technology.
Right, exactly.
That we don't have a handle.
Got a guy for that. And then, so it's really a function of two things. I think first, the reason we've seen RegTech take off overseas in Europe is because of the arbitrage, the different jurisdictions. So it's a function of quantity, how many there are, and how many rules are coming out, and then the variance in those rules. And so that's one of the reasons RegTech has really taken root in the financial services ecosystem.
So Steve, Agribull, obviously ags, right? Agriculturals. So why would a farmer be interested in big data analytics? And is there, like, do you guys help brokers work with them? Are you trying to explain how they should be interested? What's kind of your role with that?
Sure, for us, so I'm in the agricultural technology sector. My training is as an agronomist, but I did spend some time in the agricultural commodity trading world, so I do understand how to connect agriculture with the financial world. But from the farmer's perspective, over the last 5 to 7 years, technology has gotten to the point now where we can handle the big data sets, the storage, the compute times are so much faster and more affordable that farmers are really starting to use higher and higher technology every year. So I think there's definitely a connection between the ag tech world and the brokerage world that farmers execute trades with, get their newsletters or strategies from. I think the brokers themselves can be kind of that bridge to the technology. They can help introduce these new things to all their clients.
I used to be afraid of farms.
Really?
Yeah, it really was. I used to think that all the missing kids on the milk cartons were somewhere in the farms.
Probably watched too much Children of the Corn.
Yeah, I grew up on the west side of Chicago. They weren't where I was, so they must have been in the farms.
Sure.
So everybody knows, if you don't know bar charts, I mean, bar charts been around forever. I remember when bar charts first launched, when I was first getting an email address. So obviously with the type of information that bar chart provides, Allie, there has to be alternative data sets being used. So is this a tool that kind of gives traders an edge in the market? How does bar chart deal with that?
Well, with, is mine on? Yeah. Well, with bar chart, we have seen advancements in the ability to more easily use predictive analysis, which has made the adoption of alternative data easier. However, it's still very costly, and you really need to have the data clean to be able to integrate it into a model. So really in terms of the trend, what we're seeing here, I mean, well-capitalized, let's say like hedge funds and HFTs in this space, they've been using it for a long time, and yet they're still scaling their options here. Now, when we're looking forward in terms of the next wave of alternatives, it's going to be less esoteric. We're going to see fully clean data at a more affordable price. And this is something that I think is really just going to shape whether or not we see this widespread adoption here. It will depend on cost and the ability to clean data. Now with our OTC grain indices, This is provided in a clean format with very easy integration, web services where it can be hosted and easily integrated. And I think a big question too with alternative data is the data interesting? What are you actually analyzing? For instance, speaking about eggs, looking at elevator bids and weighting methods for that. Okay, you can take the simple average. That's something that might be useful, but if you can find out where your data is coming from, how it's being calculated, that scale and specificity is what's going to really matter here. Because in terms of simple average versus looking at an adjusted weighted elevator capacity and how the grain is actually transported, now you have data that's a little bit more interesting when you're actually able to look more deeper into the data. So that's just an example of one of our alternative data.
Steve, is it all computing power now? I mean, compared to where it was 5 to 7 years ago?
That and the ability to store the data, I guess, all the cloud servers and those kind of things. Maybe agriculture was not your typical thing you'd think about. You think about like Amazon data services, web services, but yeah, the amount of data that farmers generate, it goes down to natural processes, which are millions of pieces of data, weather, soils, all that kind of stuff. So yes, it's way different than it was. We couldn't do a lot of these things.
Do they store actual more data than they used to? In other words, like, do they go down to like the microbiology level now and store that as well, or is
Not quite that crazy, but it's just everything you do on the farm. Every single second a combine operates, it's collecting a piece of data. That's hundreds of thousands per field.
So cool. Brian, AI. Can you define it? I mean, how does it work fit in with RigTech?
It's a great question, and
I can look it up again.
I think it's best defined by what it isn't. Artificial intelligence is not the complete automation cycle that's going to immediately remove a task or objective in one foul swoop. It is an iterative process. We are not yet at a point where AI, whether it be machine learning based conversational networks or conversational agents, any forms of automation can completely replace a human. They still depend on human intelligence to train these models. As you've heard from these two, whether it be extraordinarily granular data or alternative data, it's still built on, it runs on that fuel. And I think that's one of the most important things to note. To take a step back and provide an analogy, smart data can be organized into useful information. Think of words into a sentence. If you take that sentence and you organize that sentence into a series of them, create a paragraph, that's knowledge, right? And if I take that knowledge and I applied it to your specific fact pattern and say, you do this part of that paragraph, well, that's about as close as we can come to human intelligence. And these are all a series of data transformations. And so it isn't something that happens. It's not magic. At no point does that happen. But it is a function of how quickly a computer can process steps that a human used to do. So my definition for AI is always something that you think 5 years from now will be normal. Because as we look at our cell phones, Microsoft Excel, probably considered AI back in its heyday when people were using abacuses. So it's as much about the divergence from the current technology as it is anything else.
Can we even comprehend how fast this is moving?
No.
No,
And
right?
The rate of change is faster than the rate of retraining of a human in in a disruptive job market. And then that's one of the biggest concerns socially.
So Alexander, we're talking about machine learning here, right? So what trends do you guys see at Bar Chart? Like if a broker or trader is interested in that sort of area, can they access this? What's the best way for them to access it?
Well, I think something that we're noticing is that people are really starting to separate the hype and marketing of the term and its actual use in applications. And as you mentioned, I mean, it is heavily supervised. I mean, you have a human there who needs to be well versed in statistics and computer programming, but eventually, and we will get to a point where it will be completely taken over by machines. That's not short-term forecast, but it's longer term. But the thing is, we are seeing more front and back office applications being used with this. But I mean, really with machine learning, any type of software there, I would not go out and get a tool that someone says, this is going to solve all of your solutions. You want to go straight to your resident data scientist, get their ideas on it, what's available out there. And then if you don't have one, that's probably something to consider expanding.
It's interesting you say that we're separating the term from the actual thing, because I remember early in my career, a lot of people said things like, they just threw words around. One specific guy I'm thinking about, some of you might know, I won't mention his name, but he would come into a meeting and say synergy over and over again. I don't think he knew what it meant. And when Ryan first asked me to do this, I thought big data was one of those words like synergy, or like AI was one of those things like synergy. Like if you want a tech job, you have to go in and say those two words, whether you know what they are or not. So I think another cool thing from early in my career is I had no idea when I first started 25 years ago how, and this is a product of being a city boy, I'm sure, how advanced farmers are in these areas. Like how they're kind of at the cutting edge, really, and from the conversation we had earlier. So what do you think, like ag tech and fintech, there's a connection there. So what does the future hold for that?
I mean, definitely, I won't get too crazy into like agronomy and those kind of things, but at Agrible, what we're doing is we're taking the big data and all that, and we're able to use computers and data storage level. Now we're actually growing a virtual crop field. So think of like the movie The Matrix. Now corn and soybeans are grown in the Matrix. We can plug in forward weather forecasting. We can see all the physical interactions in the soil now in a computer scale. We can give farmers the ability to be very proactive instead of reactive, as far as whether it comes down to planning their field operations, all the way to what their crop supply is. So for example, this July presented a great opportunity for growers to market some grain at a pretty good price level compared to maybe this last Tuesday. But for the first time, and growers themselves have an inherent understanding of their fields, their farms, their soils. But if you give them an extra boost of confidence to understand what their saleable supply is, and earlier in the summer, it's a huge advantage for a grower. I think that connects back to fintech in the way that as a broker that's dealing with farmers, if you're tied into this information stream that your grower customers are using, you can help be that actionable electronic platform. Or I have high confidence today, I need to do something. Instead of just calling up the local guy, maybe you already are in the game together in the computer. I think that'd be very interesting.
That blows my mind what farmers do. I mean, again, they're at the cutting edge of this stuff. And if you're not involved in the CME, you almost don't know that. You're almost kind of excluded from how advanced the world of agriculture and agricultural trading is. So in terms of AI, Brian, is this the watershed moment? Is this where it actually accelerates to the point everybody can't even comprehend?
I think we're a couple years away from that. I don't know if I'm qualified to opine on that either. I think what it is the recipe is more complete. When you look at things like neural networks or predictive analytics that have been around, I think they were invented 40, 50 years ago. A lot of these algorithms are nothing more than a little more advanced, obviously, than a traditional regression line. But what has happened recently is cloud computing, big data storage and manipulation, and computing power, the implementation of GPUs, and using all these tools together allows AI to thrive. And at the end of the day, the whole point is that this technology has an impact on your business, that it does something to help you move faster, gain better insights, become more efficient, make better decisions. And because of that ecosystem that has developed underneath it, AI is now useful enough to actually provide those insights in real time to your businesses, whether it be in information, agriculture, regulation. And that's why you're seeing it kind of seep into society, kind of every touching concern, every component of business these days.
Do we know where it is? Like does everybody know how it's affecting their life already?
I would argue probably not. If you've ever seen those little things pop up on Gmail, those quick responses, right? What that is an artificial neural network just guessing what your response would be to that email. And over time, it's turning all those words into variables, computing it, trying to decide what would be the best representation of what this person, based on how they respond to emails, want to write. It's already pervasive. Your Netflix recommendation engine, it's an auto recommender. It's classic machine learning. So these tools are going to take you down a certain path, largely without even knowing it. And that's one of the things that we need to be diligent about understanding.
Netflix.
Hope I didn't ruin it for you.
No, I'm a 5-year-old with this stuff. I really am. And again, the whole term big data, when I first saw this subject, to me, I was like, well, is big data finite? Does it just get bigger? I mean, as a trader, and as a hedge fund manager for years, we took the biggest chunks of data we could with the computing power that we had, and we did the best we could with it. How big does big data get? I mean,
It's not about size anymore, though. It's about how dynamic it is, how it changes, and how your interactions with those machines and what you have to do day to day updates as a result. I think it's moved past just the size. It's now the speed and velocity.
So there was a cryptocurrency panel in before us, and I know that Bar Chart has a cryptocurrency offering. So is there some way that sort of big data and new software technology is working in with cryptos as well?
Yeah, crypto's been an area that a lot of our customers have been asking about. They want high availability, multiple connectivity variations, and I mean, you can go straight to an exchange, and the issue is that you probably can't get someone to pick up the phone if you have a problem here. So in terms of, I guess, a new trend or the next wave is really the institutionalization of cryptocurrencies, and also seeing more order executions from firms. However, currently they are hesitant to do so because of liability concerns. So, I mean, in terms of new alternative data sets and market feeds and all of these products, how they relate to machine learning, I mean, it's, all of these things really do give traders an edge, a different edge. And like I said earlier, how is that data collected and calculated? It needs to be something interesting. I mean, that's sort of the definition of alternative data, but we're reaching a point where is it still going to be called alternative? When is that phrase going to adjust in some way? So eventually down the road, I don't think that we will be using that term for just collecting data in different ways and analyzing it in alternative ways as well.
So Steve, with the generational shifts back to ags,
Sure.
how does a broker sort of stay relevant with these trends? What do you do in ag tech to stay relevant?
Sure. I mean, as farmers age and succession plans happen, you're handing off a lot of the decision making to the, I'm in my early 40s, but there's a lot of people between 35 and 55.
You look great.
Thanks. They're going to be calling the shots, and they're definitely tech savvy. That's why part of the reason I joined ag tech from being an analyst for a commodities company. It's just farmers are going to be rapidly adopting this technology. You could argue whether they're late or early to it, beside the point. The reality is that the decision makers now are going to be fewer, and they're going to be more tech savvy. So as a broker who's going to ultimately tie them to the markets, whether it's options, futures, what have you, you need to be able to provide something differential and unique to these tech savvy growers. And those could be unique weather forecasts. Those could be what Alexander mentioned with quickly showing where grain bids are. But it could be all the way to we take the decision making out of it. You just flip on your computer and boom, your best market shows up. Your freight cost is right there, and you just hit go button, and the robot comes off the truck and grabs the soybeans and goes right to the elevator. So I mean, that's what's coming. That's what's coming down the line. As a brokerage company, as someone that's dealing with farmers that are executing marketing plans, that's the hardest thing as a farmer. It's like going to the casino. There's so many variables that you can't control, especially the weather, and we all know that in agriculture. So whoever can help make those decisions easy and quick and take some of the pain and guesswork out of it, those are the groups that are going to win with the farmers going forward.
How quickly do you think that's happening? Like, how quickly is it moving?
I mean, it's already there. There's some groups now that have tied the whole P&L of an operation all the way back down to the field level. It's still not fully, I guess, in my opinion, totally integrated, but you can see what's coming. I mean, you're no longer going to have to make all these decisions yourself. You're going to have partners in that all the way through. And whether that's down to the machinery you use, what seed to plant, all the way to which futures or option strategies are the best for your situation on the farm. So that's where the fintech comes into it.
Ryan, where do the advantages come from? Like, who's going to win out? There's always going to be different companies doing these things. Is the advantage with the programmers or with the individual human mind that comes up with a better pattern, or is it just who built the AI faster?
Probably both.
Probably both.
So if we take a look back to 1920 when they were making cars with assembly lines of humans, 100 humans in a row, and as the 50s and 60s and 70s occurred, and they started plucking out groups of individuals and putting a machine in place, right? Remove 10 people, put a machine. Remove 5 people, put a machine. That process is exactly what's happening in AI and in automation. The difference is it's knowledge work. So what one of you may do in a process, and I'm going to use back-end operations automation, is something where we can replicate that instead of 5 human hours to accomplish a task. You can remove 4 of those and put in a machine, or in other words, an algorithm, model. And so we're seeing this. It's exactly the same type of operational disruption. So you work at the end of that chain as opposed to throughout that chain. That level of efficiency gain is going to require adaptation. And what that means is that the people who adapt first, as in any capitalist system, are the ones who are going to win out. We have seen a transfer from variable cost to fixed cost. And if you have the capital and the fixed cost to invest, your variable cost will be much lower, and that will allow you to turn business much, much faster.
So that gives somebody like Bar Chart an advantage in this kind of a thing because they were in it so early to begin with.
Yep.
Moving into cryptos, and same thing with like ag tech, right? I mean, ag tech, you guys, AgriBull's been around for how long?
We've been around as a group for almost 5 years. I'd say its current form for the last 2 years. So it's a fast developing industry.
It's like no holes barred in terms of big data and AI, right? I mean, you guys are going.
Yeah, I mean, no holds barred. I'm not a programmer, but the amount of terabytes that goes into it's amazing. You couldn't have done it on even a server farm. I mean, it takes the whole system now.
Alexandra, I would assume Bar Chart's doing the same thing. I mean, the power is going into programming and computing at this point.
Absolutely. I mean, we've always been early adopters of technology, and we have some interesting things in the works for weather, and with the grain indices as well, and also commodity 150 indices. And so we really focus on being able to provide the best data in multiple variations, just so that it can be customized and there are off-the-shelf options. But if you do want that edge and you know exactly what you want to measure and look for, that's really what we're providing. And like you were talking about cost, IBM just came out with a study recently, and they estimated that $3.1 trillion of U.S. GDP is lost from inaccurate and unclean data. And that's just something that really has to be taken into consideration. Some companies estimate that they've lost 32% of their investments into certain programs or even data scientists because the data just isn't accurate or correct. So that's something where you really have to have systems in place where you're constantly checking these, having that accurate algorithms, and yes, machines learn that as well.
So Alexandra just kind of answered what I was going to ask all three of you to kind of go through. And I'll start with Steve. It's like, this is probably, I can probably answer this, but if you could expand on it a little bit. Should people in the futures industry, whether it's ags or regulations, and again, Alexandra just answered, should you be afraid of AI and big data? Is this something that's taking you over, or is the way to survive to just say, I'm diving in as well, and I'm going to get the right partners? And again, I probably know the answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you need to be afraid of it. You have to embrace what it is. It's the future, and whether you're farming in Iowa or Mato Grosso, Brazil, it's going to drive the whole system. So no, I don't think you need to be afraid of it. You just have to utilize it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously agree. At its core, what this is doing is creating efficiency throughout the entire system in any of these industries. And the other side of that coin is that's why we've seen an increase in the outsourced model of cooperative partnerships with different types of firms that specialize in that. But most of what we talked about from an AI or an ag tech, what you folks are doing on the data and machine learning side, regulation, it's not something that you need to understand how it works. It's something that you need to embrace and utilize so you can execute your business that you know better. It's always about having the best tools. One of the best quotes I've ever heard is that all of this technology is enabling, right? It's just like what I gave a moment ago. You know, you go from a calculator that you're typing things into to Microsoft Excel. That's all AI is. It's just a new form of enabling technology. So when you have the partners who can help you implement that faster, quicker, cheaper, that'll position you in a better position to win at whatever your business is executing.
So the outsource model.
I think that's why we've seen a movement towards that a little bit more, and I don't mean that as a plug. I think it's just the natural evolution in the ecosystem.
Same, Alexandra?
I think it's interesting how you said you don't have to understand it to be able to implement it, and I think that's why people are so hesitant to say that they're fine with AI. You have all of these people who are so against it. They think the robots are going to take over, and it's really, they don't necessarily need that deep understanding of how it works, but I think those types of personalities, they feel like they must have that in order to accept this form of technology. Otherwise, it won't be accepted. And then it goes back to, oh, government and Big Brother watching everyone. I think it begins to spiral after that once you talk about AI in general. So I mean, in the big picture, it's not really an area to be concerned with.
So we have 45 minutes for this panel. That's what was allotted, so we got about 4 minutes left. I probably have more questions than any of you, but if anybody's got any questions, there's a microphone in the middle. I think that's on. I'd love to hear them. If not, there's food outside. We got one.
Hi. Could you give us, probably a question for Steve, could you give us some case studies of some success stories in this?
Sure.
It's easy to be paranoid a little bit, but let's hear some good news.
Yeah, so for farmers in general, it's a cost savings tool. It's in these low commodity price environments we're seeing after the ethanol boom, every penny counts nowadays. So these technologies that farmers are using are going to enable them to be the most efficient they can be. And what we're doing at my company is we're taking that one step further. We're actually connecting growers into sustainability efforts, sustainability metrics, help growers grow more valuable food that the CPGs of the world want to produce so they get on the shelves at Walmart. So technology is enabling that to happen. It never would have been possible not too long ago. And as a grower, in the next couple of years before the next cycle, it's going to be very challenging. So you need to take every little nickel and dime you can out of the operation.
So you're going to jump on board with that. Ours cost savings too. We had a big bank working with, and a couple of them actually. One of them said this is going to save us 42% on their top line compliance costs. It's a global bank. It's a big number. So we've seen the same thing.
Do you guys have any cases where like you save them so much money that they then pay for their own version of what you gave them? That kind of esoteric.
I don't think we're there yet. I think from our company standpoint, we're young, we're pretty new, and we do get the question a lot of, you build it once, everyone can use it. That's true, but that's the nature of the industries that we're in. Is data has a distribution cost of zero, right? A marginal cost of zero, and that is why it allows folks to purchase the services at relative, historically, much cheaper prices.
I guess I'll say one more thing too on my end. So we have the whole global community that's wanting to be more environmentally friendly, more efficient, and people are driven by profit. So being efficient is one thing, but it's also going to benefit the world in general. So we're going to be more efficient in using fertilizer and greenhouse gas emissions and carbon footprints, all those kind of things. So there's definitely societal benefits beyond what AI is doing to everything else. It's making things happen better. So.
Anyone else? Don't feel any pressure. All right, well, I want to thank the panel, Alexandra, Steve, Brian. Thank you guys for attending. Everybody's outside. If you had any questions you didn't feel like coming up to the mic to ask.